I have a few thoughts on the current George Floyd situation and a lot of thoughts on the surrounding foundation of how stuff like this keeps getting set up and knocked down. Information is coming to light in real time, but it's probably important to establish that while these white cop kills unarmed black man events are occasionally not as cut and dry as they're made out to be on the news of the internet, this one almost certainly is, and was caught entirely on video. Out of the 3 cops holding him down on the ground, one was pressing his knee against the back of George Floyd's neck hard enough and for long enough that he straight up died over the course of 10 minutes, in which he was consistently talking about how he couldn't breathe and begged them to let up, all while onlookers were also telling the cops to let him fucking breathe, and the onlookers were also the ones who noticed when he stopped being responsive and told the cops to check his pulse while they dragged their feet over it, and then EMTs or whoever came over to check him out, and they had to tell the one cop to get his goddamn knee off the guy, because up to that point, his knee was still on the guy's neck. Derek Chauvin, aka Officer Kneecap, was arrested and charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter, and the other 3 cops involved were fired. And in the meantime, Minneapolis and now other places have erupted in riots and looting, which we'll talk about shortly. After watching the video of the incident, I have arrived at the personal conclusion, based on what I saw and what was happening, that this Derek Chauvin guy straight up did not give a fuck that he was killing this dude on the ground, whether he thought the guy was bullshitting about not being able to breathe, or was just super comfortable with where he had his knee resting. What I witnessed was, if not outright intent to murder, at least criminal negligence to like the worst degree you can possibly have. Like, this was the equivalent of, I don't know, sitting on someone's neck with your knee until they died and then not doing anything while they complained about the fact that they were dying. So to be clear, fuck Officer Kneecap, he seems like a real piece of shit. If you're wondering why Floyd was arrested in the first place, it's because he tried to use a counterfeit $20 bill to buy cigarettes, so naturally the police were on high alert and ready to take him out if necessary, or in this case, extremely unnecessary. To be clear, this person should not be dead. He shouldn't have died, but he did, because some asshole treated his neck like one of those floor cushions at Japanese restaurants. It's injustice that he is dead. Don't let anything else I might say over the course of this episode erase the fact that I said and believe that. Officer Kneecap is being sentenced to 12 years in prison for this offense. Some people don't think that's long enough, but regardless of feelings about how this all went down, you cannot throw away the key on this guy without clear evidence of intent, which there isn't. Hence, third-degree murder and manslaughter. It can't be first-degree murder, because first-degree murder has to be both willful and premeditated, and I don't know how you would prove that this guy responded to the police call about a dude using a counterfeit bill like, oh man, I can't wait to get over there and intentionally kill this person. Let me plan this out step by step and then execute it accordingly. So that's out. If you're advocating for a first-degree murder charge, you are not familiar with the criminal justice system. Second-degree murder is intentional murder that lacks premeditation, which you also probably can't prove, because how are you going to prove this was intentional, even in the heat of the moment? Like, Chauvin very well may have decided while his knee was building a nest for its chicks that he was going to see this through to the end and kill the guy, but that's something that would have taken place inside his mind, and unless you get him to crack, you won't be able to prove that either. So give him a few rounds in the interrogation room, but if it doesn't pan out, then you're screwed there. So third-degree murder is what's left. It's what you do when you can't prove first or second degree. So to me, and in the eyes of the law, this is the most acceptable charge. And that's the logical conclusion to come to. You can't just bring the maximum punishment hammer down on a guy without sufficient proof. If you try it, you erode the whole system. So I think the sentence is right, because even if I strongly doubt the possibility that it was all a big horrible oopsie-daisy, I can't rule it out. And neither can you without pretending to know things you don't. Also, he's a cop who just killed an unarmed black guy in front of the entire country, and he's going to jail. This man is gonna die in prison, and if he miraculously doesn't, he will have lived through 24/7 fear and torment of the highest order, non-stop, for 12 years. If you actually try and imagine that for a second, you might find yourself satisfied with the punishment. But so in the aftermath of all this, we have riots and looting and burning buildings. We have a community of people hell-bent on destroying their own community. Riots are one thing. If you're mad and you want to group up and shout about it, you go right ahead. But if in the middle of doing that, you're suddenly like, that smart TV looks ripe for the taking, you no longer have any moral ground to stand on, and you've become nothing more than an opportunistic piece of garbage weaponizing a tragedy to furnish your fucking pad. Justice for George Floyd, and new headphones for me. Justice for George Floyd. Oh, that grill looks nice. Justice for George Floyd. These sweaters are never on sale. fuck looters, wholesale. And what are you burning down restaurants for? What are you doing smashing the windows of black-owned small businesses? Have you lost the goddamn plot? Did you ever have it to begin with? Even some of the victims of these riots have contracted a mind virus. The owner of a restaurant that burned down made a post saying, "We can rebuild a building, but we cannot give this man back to his family. Let my building burn. Justice needs to be served." That's a very sweet and faintly psychotic sentiment, that someone would offer their whole livelihood as collateral damage just to slake a crowd's thirst for destruction, aka justice. Like, oh, feeling bad about police brutality? Why don't you come burn down my restaurant that had nothing to do with anything? You'll feel much better, even though you actually won't. If you were grieving over the loss of a loved one and someone walked over to you like, "Hey there, I know you're feeling angry right now. Why don't you take this knife and stab me anywhere you like? Go ahead, I'm a friend of the cause." You'd be like, you're a creep like none I've ever seen before, please go away. People are sharing that post like it's noble. It isn't. It's just senseless. You read it and you're like, wow, they're making a big sacrifice. And then you think about it and you're like, oh, it's for literally no reason. That's weird. It also perpetuates the idea that destroying buildings and putting people out of business is somehow achieving the goal of justice to begin with. It's not. This situation shows off the power of the media. The media is the catalyst for all of it. This is a horrible thing that happened, but horrible things happen in the dozens on a daily basis around this country, but we only get riots when the media decides they want to start a race war by giving wall-to-wall coverage of one particular incident that fits whatever narrative they're trying to present at the time. That's just what happens. But if black cops shoot an unarmed white person, you just won't hear about it, to the point where people legitimately argue that it has never occurred. The reality is that when black people are killed by white people, it's national, and when white people are killed by black people, it's local. But that's not indicative of society. That's indicative of how the media wants to control society. I'm not trying to say that people don't care when white people die. We just aren't told about it. We would if we were told. When black people die, we're told. And we care. And we kind of have to, because the people telling us repeat themselves so goddamn much that it's all we can think about. And there's no sensitive way to ask this question, which will draw ire immediately. But you know I'm going to ask it anyway. How much should we all care when cops kill someone? White or black, or Mexican, or Asian, or whatever else? How much should we care? Are we being told in proportion to how much we should care? Are we perhaps being told too much? We're getting browbeaten with this information. They wouldn't stop yelling if we shut off their megaphones. We are bombarded with the news of police doing their job incredibly poorly, constantly. It's the news's favorite topic outside of the weather. I don't know why the anchors don't all have huge smiles on their faces every time, like, get excited, America, we're about to do 16 different segments on our favorite story. You watch the news for two reasons, to see if it's gonna rain on Thursday and which unarmed black people are dead by cops this month. And I gotta say, and you won't like this either, I'm a little tired of hearing about it, to be honest with you, because in a country of roughly 49.5 million black people, the amount of yearly unarmed black deaths by cop barely breaks into the dozens. In 2017, 21 unarmed black people were shot by police. Total. And not even all of them were by white cops. In 2019, there were 9! Go to your calculator on your phone, type in the number 9, then press the division symbol, and then type in 49,600,000. Press the equal sign. The unimaginably tiny decimal you end up with, that's the supposed racist police problem we have in America on a yearly basis. It is abject horse shit. So forgive me if I think we dedicate too much screen time to it, but also don't forgive me because I'm not fucking sorry about it. That isn't to say we shouldn't do anything, but also, what is there to do that isn't already being done? The numbers are already going down. We went from 21 to 9 in 2 years. I don't understand people who hear that 9 unarmed black people were killed by police in 2019 and go, well, it needs to be 0. It's not gonna fucking be 0, you idiot. There is no crime stat that sits at a comfortable 0. Every crime stat should be 0, but they aren't and never will be, will they? Oh, how peaceful the utopia in your brain must be. Would be a shame if someone injected a lethal dose of reality into it. Your stance on this subject is really, there should be no crime. That's your stance. You stand comfortably proud behind that stance. You go on Twitter and proclaim there should be no crime, and people applaud and respect you, and you feel like a hero of justice. But you're in kindergarten. Emotionally, logically, you are a kindergartner, and you give a class presentation like, look at the black people who've been shot by the cops. Wouldn't it be nice if there was no black people shot by the cops? Your compassion has infantilized your thought process. We don't live in heaven. We don't live in paradise. We live in a place where fucked up things happen on the regular, and they can be reduced but not eliminated. And guess what? I'm really glad that that number is small. Everyone should be over the moon that there are so few unarmed black people killed by cops. Like, wow, you're telling me cops only kill 0.000000018% of unarmed black people in a country where we used to enslave them? That sounds like a goddamn miracle. That should be the news story. Oh my god, you guys, look at how far we've come as a society. But people constantly use the microscopic amount of horrible things that do happen to try and frame the whole perspective on race in America. It's like if you lived in the desert and it rained like 3 times a year, and every day that it rained, people would go on the news and say, rain is the biggest problem in the desert. This desert was founded on rain. By proponents of rain, our systems are built on rain. Rain is at the very core of our society. Will we ever see a day without rain? Yeah, the other 362 days out of the fucking year. I'm just sick of it, man. The news takes an insignificant problem, numerically, not emotionally. Dude, 100 times more people die each year to lightning strikes. Would you call lightning deaths a significant problem? I don't think so. Please remain seated. But at least the lightning isn't racist. I mean, I hope you keep thinking that. Won't be surprised if the year 2030 rolls around and people try to get lightning canceled on Twitter because someone snapped a photo of it wearing blackface. But the news takes an insignificant problem, magnifies it to times 2400 under a microscope, and then hands us the pictures like, aren't you outraged by how massive this looks? I got no more energy for it after this one. I'm done. What happened to George Floyd was a terrible tragedy. Literally, I'm not exaggerating. But like most terrible tragedies that happen all across the country, I never should have heard about it. That's gonna do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it or at least didn't scream at it. Like, share, and subscribe if you choose. Follow me on Twitter at Sunburned Albino, and I will see you guys next time.